debate about the Mercosur agreement and the ratification debate, because this is really very important. We have to ratify the Mercosur. Both sides still have to do it, the South American four states and also the 27 states of the European Union, the European Parliament. And this is really an amazing opportunity to improve the global economy, the European economy, to help the South Americans and really make a big difference in this corona crisis for boosting global growth and global trade. And that's really very, very important. It would be a pity to miss that, and it would be irresponsible because it would ultimately add another big shock to the global economy at a time when we really don't need another big shock. And I appeal to the European authorities and to the European leaders, please make sure that you ratify the Mercosur agreement exactly now. It's the few opportunities we have. There is some opposition in Europe to it, and I will discuss now the various aspects. Please, we will save the Amazonas only by having influence in South America. Just tweeting like the French president or like making petitions will really not save the Amazonas. In the past, when we wanted something from other countries, that's the tragic history, we went there with cannon boats. But this we don't do anymore, luckily, and we shouldn't. It was wrong. But we can bomb them as long as we want, in order to save the Amazonas. We can boycott them, that's another option, but this only makes them poorer, and they will also continue to exploit the Amazonas. So if you want to save the Amazonas, we all want that, it's a wonderful green lung of the earth. Then we have to have regulatory influence by a mutually agreed trade agreement. And that's the EU free trade agreement with the Mercosur. It sets common standards. It helps, to have a joint influence, to really have a partnership. And that's ultimately what modern free trade agreements are. They are not going there telling them what to do, what we want to do, and force them. No, we agree on quotas, we agree on common standards, we agree on joint mechanisms for all the difficult topics, and that's the way we have it. And now I really call the new Commission President. She will have now this State of the Union address. Please lead this debate for the Mercosur ratification. Don't let it slip away in some kind of mixed marks of climate. It's all very important. Environment, it's all very important. But this is the tool to save the global environment. This is the tool to save the global economy in the corona crisis. This is the tool to save the Amazon. And you, Mrs. von der Leyen, you have to lead this debate. There's nobody else. You are this European personality who can carry the day and convince the doubters and explain these things. This is really very important. So we want to be real partners with the South Americans, and the free trade agreement is really the way to protect the Amazons. And I call on all who want to help the Amazonas and the South Americans that you really help to ratify this agreement now in the coming months. This is really very important, and I hope that this will be achieved. A key argument, of course, is the way to reduce poverty in Latin America. Do you want to reduce poverty in Latin America? Obviously, that's, I think, we all want. I cannot really think of anybody who wants the Latin Americans to stay poor. And they are considerably poorer than Europeans. They are about at 30% of the GDP in average, the Mercosur countries, to the Europeans, and they have considerable poverty levels. They have not so developed welfare states, they have not so rich economies, they are still in many aspects frontier societies in many aspects. And we see that also in the corona, so I think we should help them. And the way to help them is a free trade agreement. It integrates our economies, it opens opportunities, it will lift, both the European and the South American economies towards new levels of prosperity, and it's the decent thing to do. So if you want to help them, after all the things, by the way, we did really terrible wrong for against the South Americans, the colonization, imperialism, we really have a moral responsibility, I think, after all the terrible things that happened in the past, now to get this right And this free trade agreement, it's a common regulatory framework for our trade. And as I've said, the time for cannon boats is over. What we do now is mutually agreeable forms of negotiations, yeah? And this were ended at the end of the June 2019 summit. Luckily, after many complications, 20 years of negotiations, this is a historic agreement. And I'm very proud that we have it and that everybody shall be proud about it. And this is the way to reduce poverty in Latin America. So when it comes to the current economic situation, also here a fast ratification of the Mercosur agreement is one of the few tools we have. We have really started with a huge fiscal stimulus that was very good on the 21st of July. All in all, the European states in the EU, the 27, and the EU have mobilized over 4 trillion euros. It's quite substantial. But what we also need is to have a real long-term growth corridor for this decade in order to lift the economies again out of poverty and out of this crisis, which the unemployment and many negative factors the corona crisis has led to this economic crisis of 2020. And so what we need to do is have a structural improvement in the global economy. More easier trade, more freer trade. Obviously, that's the way for prosperity. And the way, there's not so many tools because not every free trade agreement can be done very fast. Yeah? And we have already, you see the list on the state of the EU trade, we have already free trade agreements with a lot of areas of the world, with a lot of partners, and the Mercosur agreement is the one which is ready for ratification. So this can be done now in 2020, and really it will have a very big impact because it will create the biggest free trade regulated area of the world. And this is really very important. This is the countering for the answer to the corona crisis. And, if we don't ratify it or do another CETA disaster, years of ratification debate, yeah, and somehow making complete protectionist fools out of ourselves, then we add another shock to a very fragile economy. And I ask Mrs. Ursula von der Leyen, do you want to be in charge and responsible for another shock to the global economy? That would be really, really very bad. So, of course, we have in Europe a lot of agro-protectionism, and I call it beef populism, that the countryside is in danger because of Mercosur, our cows will be in danger, our way to live will be in danger, everything will be in danger because of Mercosur. When you see the left wing and the agro-protectionist populist kind of farmer lobbies, you see that Mercosur is the worst in the world, yeah? They have no consideration for the farmers in Latin America, They only think about their own farmers. Well, that's what they're paid for, that's fine. But it's ultimately totally wrong if we simply, as a general European public, accept a very small minority interest as our overriding priority and allow them, this maybe 2-3% of the overall European population, to block with their kind of lobbying power what is very important for European industries, for European consumers, for European SMEs. Yeah? There's enormous new opportunities here, and we cannot block them for the benefit of a small lobby, which is anyhow subsidized by the tunes of 365 billion alone of European transfers. Yeah? I mean, that's quite a lot, which we just have now in the new budget again. And Copa Cogeca is really having the audacity to lead this campaign against the Mercosur with, the farms will die. They will not. We anyhow help them and we support them, But this is for the consumers, and everybody is a consumer. This is for the general economy. Also, the European farmers are depending on affluent European consumers, which have a purchasing power to buy these products, yeah? Because we sell our cars and our machinery and our IT and our pharma to the South Americans. Yeah? And be sure there is also a lot of lobby over there against our industrial products. Yeah? But when we don't have this market access, or very expensively only because it's highly protected with high tariffs at the moment, and the Mercosur is reducing them, then our consumers don't have the purchasing power to buy this beautiful meat and milk and European produce, yeah, which we anyhow have protected in the Mercosur agreement with all these wonderful geographical indicators, yeah, which basically is very much unfair to the rest of the world, who also do very good Gouda cheese or feta cheese. Anyhow, don't get me started on that. We have to help the farmers, we have to support them, and by the way, we do. We do quite considerable. We really give a lot of money to them, and we also support them in many other non-monetary aspects, like in these geographical indicators. But if they have the audacity to block the Mercosur, then we are ready for a big fight for that, yeah? Because this cannot be the case, yeah? It's unacceptable that Copa Cogeca, with all the subsidies and living quite well with that, yeah, is then leading the anti-Mercosur and anti-free trade debate in such an important moment. And please, this has to be contained. This is really simplistic beef populism and agro-protectionism of the worst kind. So please ratify this agreement and rein in the farm lobby. So we have here quite a lot of young leaders, which we were told we have to vote for. In various countries, we had this big debate about Austrian politics, about Dutch politics, about French politics. And in these decisive years after the Brexit and after the Ukraine crisis, we were told Emmanuel Macron will save Europe. We have to all be with Rutte in the Netherlands, otherwise the populists come. We have to all support Sebastian Kurz and his young team of reformers because they are so wonderful people and they will rein in the populists and they will be a new generation of European leaders. Bravo. Yes, that was good, better than the other options of these really ugly populists. But sadly, they are very protectionists. They are very mean populists by themselves. Yeah? Look what Kurz is doing for the Moria children. Look what they say now against Mercosur. And their way to fight the populists is to be even more populistic. Yeah? And to be agro-protectionist populists, yeah? And this is really very bad. Lead this debate, Kurz and Rutte, about the frugal four in the time of the biggest crisis we have currently. And, doing all this under strategic autonomy. Yeah? And that's basically good old French agro-protectionism. And that's really something very disappointing. These are people in young generations, in their 30s and 40s, young leaders with all the access to global knowledge and information. And what they do is, for their own political electoral purposes, yeah, well calculated, make sure the rural farming communities are still voting for me. Yeah? Basically, that's the idea. And then make a big devil out of this quite terrible, actually, he's an easy target, this Jair, and then the Amazonas, and then, destroy one of the biggest opportunities we have for the improvement of the world. Yeah? So really, you should be better than that. And I'm very disappointed, and really, we have to ratify Mercosur and get over that. And the Austrians and the French and the Dutch, please, I appeal you, find again morality. Your position is so mean towards the South Americans, who are also European friends and partners and fellow global human beings. Yeah? How can you boycott them just for your own small parliamental purposes in one rural community, because you somehow make them a lot of fear of Mercosur, which is completely unjustified, because the EU treaty, which was negotiated, has taken all these topics very well into consideration. Especially look at the rights of the indigenous people, because that's a big argument, By the way, it's very interesting. First of all, in the free trade agreement, obviously it's a chapter. Secondly, most of the South American indigenous people live in countries which are not in the Mercosur at the moment. But we have already free trade agreement with the Andean, with the Western South Americans, basically. That's a different free trade area in America, the Andean Pact. Yeah? So basically, we work with the lack of information, we make fear, we do populistic arguments like, oh, the indigenous people will be worse off. No, they will be much better off. There will be better regulated way to do business. There will be better governance in South America. There will be more prosperity, and this will lift everybody. And we have a leverage towards the authorities to talk to them when they do things wrong in the Amazonas and with indigenous people. This is really how we should do it. And so, please, this argument is not valid. Yeah. Then comes the idea of food safety. It's a big chapter in every free trade agreement. Do you think the EUs are like incompetent? Do you think the Austrian authorities are more competent than the European trade negotiators who do that for the EU treaties in the start of the EU? We even don't have trade negotiators anymore in the Europe, in the Austria and in the member state because it's all a European authority. And how do you think that you know food safety better than in Brussels? It's somehow totally hybrid and really arrogant. Ultimately, this is a big chapter in there, and this is actually a very very big topic. And I have, sorry, this is not totally the right slide now. This is about my Montenegro slide. I have to apologize for that one. Okay, let's go for the next one because that was seemingly not completely finished in the food safety topic. Yeah? Good. Another big topic is saving Argentina from complete collapse in this crisis. Because, that's a really big worry we have. Argentina, again, is in this third big economic crisis, has a massive inflation rate, massive interest rates, the peso's in free fall, and now comes the corona. And do you really want to have a big collapse of Argentina? Is this really what we want? Yeah? A big crisis in an important country, and then we let it fall and it will affect the whole global economy? No, and they have not been very able in this fragile periphery country, beautiful as it is, in Argentina with the economic policy, always from very neoliberal towards very socialist in pendulum, and it is a big mess. What they need is a stable regulatory framework. And this is what the EU FTA is partly providing. It will give them hope and stability, and this will avoid the collapse together with the IMF and other organizations. And this is really very important. And please, it's important to avoid this complete collapse. And that's also one important argument for the Mercosur ratification. So, then we come for supporting South America. When you look at the numbers, it's quite striking. Europe with 500 million and Mercosur 4 with about half the population. But we have 19 billion GDP and they have 2.5. If you make the argument, you can really see that with better governance and better regulatory standards, even Brazil, which is now at about 9,000 GDP per capita, Germany, in comparison, as the biggest EU member, is at 46,000, so 4.5 times better. And you really see where there is huge potential with better market access, better access to good governance, better regulatory standards, and all this the FTA provides. The Mercosur can really go to new levels and maybe in the next 20 years add another 5 trillion to the global output. That would be wonderful. A richer country ready to really invest into all the things from infrastructure to better land regulation to better environmental protection. That all comes along with prosperity, and that would be really good. If we block the Mercosur, we will see South America in a deep crisis, and it will be our responsibility. So again, the moral equivalent of the 19th century cannon boats is really wrong. Yeah, you see, for example, even this left NGO for the agriculture sector estimates there will be much better trade volumes between the EU and South America, Mercosur countries. They have here the statistics of how much the agriculture will grow, and they say, oh, that's very bad for the climate. Growth in trade. Yeah. So if you don't like growth in trade, I really cannot help anybody anymore. Then probably for you, it's really not a good idea, this FTA. Because the idea to growth in trade, that's livelihoods of people, that's prosperity of farmers, that's really kind of better income and revenues for the SMEs in that area. and for the small business. That's really very good. If we really have just a moral cannon boat, yeah, go there, tell them what to do, and you have to do that, and otherwise we will starve you to oblivion. That's really a very terrible thing to do. Work with them, trade with them, not moral imperialism, but really day-to-day interaction. What's the value, what's the good, what's going on? This is really helping everybody. And then there can be a better life in South America, there can be better standards attached, and gradually, in a really lasting partnership for the long term, South America and Europe can really grow much better towards a better prosperity level together. And that's much better than moral cannon boats derailing the global economy. Here I miss N. Good. So that's really very important. Yeah? And so I call on the ratification for the Mercosur. So if we want to have, and certainly there are issues in South America, if we want to help them, if we want to support the development in South America and, also our own development and also global good governance, which is ultimately the key for all this, then let's agree in an added memorandum that the four members of Mercosur also are joining the OECD and that the EU will support all four of them to join the OECD, because the OECD is additionally to the free trade agreement then addressing all these issues which there can be and which there should be improved in the coming decade in South America. And let's help them by making this membership realistic. We have in South America already Costa Rica and Colombia and Chile as member. And why shouldn't we have also in this global union of market economies, market democracies, which the OECD should be, to have a more active leadership? I very much welcome the former trade commissioner to run for the OECD leadership position, Mrs. Malmström. She would be fantastic personality for that. And then really to look forward and to get these four countries in a timeline of next year, not very long, into the OECD, and then to work upwards towards better standards in all the key issues. And Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, and Paraguay would be really very much benefiting. And basically, that's my call. Add this OECD membership to the Mercosur. Get it ratified now. Really, let's be successful. Let's counter the corona recession with a fast-track ratification, and let's be very successful on that one together with our friends and partners in South America. And by the way, I would like to lift a little bit. We have already with a lot of Americans, especially with Canada, but also with the Andean countries from Colombia to Peru, we have already free trade agreements. And with Chile, we are negotiating in the next level. With Mexico, we've just finished. So basically, this is a total normal thing to do. This is what we have done and what we will do. And really being against the EU FTA with Mercosur is a completely unacceptable, populistic, protectionist, anti-European position, which is morally deeply flawed. And I call on everybody, please, this is not funny. This is not, I saved the Amazonas and I'll be a good person. It's for the climate, yeah. I destroyed the world, yeah. But it's good for the climate, yeah. This is ultimately a very moral and very wrong position. Please, if you think about that, see this video again, make up your own mind, but please, now it's time to ratify the EU FTA with the Mercosur. It's good for global prosperity, it's good for Europe, it's good for the South Americans, and it's good for the global economy now in the time of crisis. This will be the key instrument for a richer, more successful, more prosperous, and more greener, and more secure and better governed world economy. And please support it. And please, Ursula, lead this debate. Yeah? This is not to be dodged an issue. This is where it needs political leadership, and there's nobody better than you as the President of the European Commission to lead this debate. And please ratify Mercosur now.